Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 18 of season 2026. And today we're taking a look ahead towards round 4. It's our preview episode for AFL 2026 round 4. Big weekend of football. Easter weekend football. 8 games. 2 teams have the bye. St Kilda and GWS. Every other team is playing. Kicks off Thursday night. Goes through to Monday this week. So plenty to get through. That's all to come in this episode. As well as that, we're going to kick off with a look at our leaderboard for the Brownlow so far this year, MVP, and the 5 highest rated players for every position so far in 2026. All of that and more, so stick around. Hope you enjoy. Yeah, pretty much that's about it. Let's jump into it. We do this podcast twice every single week. This one is our preview episode. We also do review episodes, which go live every Monday throughout the season. So make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button and, come back for more. First of all, our Brownlow leaderboard after round 3. If you're new around here, we do 3, 2, 1 votes for every single game. Not necessarily who we think is the best player, but we go with who we think the umpires will vote for. So we try and get this as accurate to the to what we think the Brownlow will actually be at the end of the season. After round 3, Nick Dacos leads our leaderboard with 8 votes. Only missing one so far in there. 1 loss gave him 2. Next up, we have a 4-way tie. Petrarca, 6. Clayton Oliver, 6. 2 ex-Melbourne players, both having great starts to their year. Harry Sheasel on 6 and Zach Butters also on 6. Next up, we got Sarong and Bontempelli on 5 each. We have about 8 players on 4 and even more players on 3. So that's our leaderboard. Our top, 7 players after 3 rounds. We'll see how that continues to progress through this season. We'll continue to keep updated. We also post match by match on Instagram straight after the game. TikTok does go up on Mondays, our Brownlow updates, but also Twitter and X and Blue Sky. We post match wraps that have our 3-2-1s every single day after the game, basically, usually within an hour or so of the game finishing, provided I get the opportunity to do it. So if you want to keep track of that, make sure you follow along on all the social medias. There's plenty of content all the time on that sort of stuff. Moving on right along to our MVP leaderboard. And there it is. If you're new around here, as it says in the top corner, top 5 players for every team get votes every single match. The winning team get 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. The losing team get 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So the losing team get half of what the winning team do. If there are any draws, you basically just split the middle. Pretty simple. After round 3, so 2 teams have played 4 games. They are St Kilda and GWS. Every other team has played 3 matches. Bontempelli leads the way, continues to lead the way. He was leading after last round. Obviously, the Bulldogs had the bye last week, so he hasn't moved from 24 votes after 3 matches. Cal Wilkie has had an outstanding start to the year. Number 1 key defender in the competition so far in 2026. He's on 23. Maxi Gawn. Will this guy ever slow down? I mean, eventually he probably will, but he's on 21. In equal 4th place, we have Josh Tracy from Fremantle. He's been really, really good early season. And Christian Petrarca, also on 20 votes. Next up, we got Zach Butters and Bailey Smith, both on 18 votes. In 8th place, we got Bolton from Fremantle, second Fremantle player. And somehow, arguably their best 2 midfielders aren't on there. That's crazy. 17 for Bolton, and then in equal 9th spot is Jack Sinclair from St Kilda on 16 and Noah Anderson also on 16. So that's our top 10 after 3 rounds. There'll be a bit of a shake-up this week, no doubt. No Wilkie or Sinclair playing, so you'd think, Wilkie will stay in the top 10, you'd imagine, but Sinclair probably drops out of the top 10 this week, you would imagine. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, that's our top 10 after round 3 of the AFL 2026 season. Next up, we got the top 5 ranked players for every single position. If you're new around here, we do an All Aussie Rules rating for every single player for every single game, based on all their stats and pretty much everything there is to do in a game. We've worked on this formula, I guess, over the last couple seasons, kept tinkering it, and I think I'm pretty happy with how it is at the moment. Certain positions outscore other positions. Yeah, inside mids are your high scoring position. Ruck's typically second, but they have been brought back a little bit this year, I think, to be more aligned a bit with some other positions, especially general defenders aren't far behind them. But overall, most positions are pretty similar, but I mean, the ones that are around the football more often, which are your midfielders, tend to score higher. Yeah, outside midfielders are probably the lowest scoring position, followed by general forwards typically. Also, key forwards do struggle at times as well. But general defenders, Jack Sinclair leads the way from St Kilda quite comfortably. He's had a really good start to the year. Crisp, who has been general defender but also outside midfielder, I would imagine he'll probably move into that outside midfield role. If he does play that again this week, he would be listed as an outside midfielder. But, I mean, he'd be top 2 or 3 in that position as well. Dane Zorko, fantastic start to his year as well. He's been really good. Tom Stewart, solid start to his year. And Josh Dacos in 5th spot. Key defenders, as we mentioned before, Callum Wilkie has been fantastic so far this year. James Sicily is in 2nd spot. Probably at some point will be more general defender than key defender, but at the moment he's listed as a key defender. Nick Blakey next up. He's another that could move into that general defender role. Jake Lever, been really good. He was fantastic last week, was in our round 3 team of the week. If you are interested in who was in our team of the week, check out either TikTok or Instagram for those posts. They went live on Tuesday, I think, from memory. Josh Worrell in 5th spot, one of our favourite key defenders here at All Aussie Rules. General forwards, we got Miller from Gold Coast leading the way so far this year. Nick Watson in 2nd. He's been outstanding this year so far. Then the Geelong duo, Brian Myers and Sean Manor, basically the exact same score. Both had really good starts to the year. And Max Hall is in 5th spot as a general forward. Key forwards, you'll notice that the Coleman leading player isn't actually on this list. It's because he barely touches the ball, but when he does, he kicks goals. He's, I think he's ranked 6th as a key forward from memory, and that is obviously Ben King from Gold Coast. But number 1 is Josh Tracy. He's been outstanding so far this year. If he continues this, Fremantle are going to be very, very potent. Lukosius from Port Adelaide only played the 2 games so far. I would imagine his rating will start to drop over the next few weeks. But his ratings have been quite high so far. Aaron Norton, he's had a really good start to the year. The game against GWS, obviously the highlight of that. Jack Gunston, just consistency. Last year and already so far this year, that consistent play from him has just been outstanding. And 5th place, Jakey Waterman, back to his 2024 form so far. He's been really, really good up forward for the Eagles, who are sitting at 2 wins and a loss. Inside mids, we got Christian Petrarca leading the way. Obviously off injured at the moment, but he was fantastic in his first couple games. Bontempelli is next up. He's been outstanding, as he always is. He has been the number 1 ranked player the last 2 seasons, so we'll see if that continues. Obviously, at the moment, I think he's sitting 3rd behind Petrarca and Max Gawn. Zach Butters in 3rd. You know what you're going to get from him. He's been outstanding. Noah Anderson started the year really well. Errol Goulden's obviously another one that's injured, but rated really high in those early couple games. Outside midfielders, another injured player here in Murdoch from West Coast, but what a start to his career he had with his first 2 games. Hopefully he's not out for too much longer. I think expected to be about 3 weeks. Bailey Williams from the Bulldogs, he's been good. Jared Berry was outstanding on the weekend. He rose up the ranks a little bit, up to 3rd as an outside mid. Jace Burgoyne, maybe back to his best football. Last year wasn't his greatest season, let's be honest, but maybe back towards that 2024 form that we saw. Port Adelaide certainly need it based on what we've seen so far this year. Number 5, another first-year player in Willem Dersma, number 1 pick from last year. He was outstanding last weekend. I think his rating last week was about a 134. So really rose up the ranks. I think he's ranked 81 in the competition so far this year. For someone that's only played 3 games, fantastic effort. And our rucks, no surprise at the top of the list here. Max Gawn way out in front. He's been fantastic in every game so far. The big X-Man, who's been suspended for 3 weeks, is second. Then Timmy English from the Bulldogs. Brodie Grundy from Sydney and Luke Jackson from the Dockers is your top 5 rucks so far this season. We'll jump into game-by-game previews. And we'll kick off on Thursday night. It'll be at the Gabba. Traditional Easter Thursday match between the Brisbane Lions and the Collingwood Magpies. You can pretty much ignore that 2026 rating. I don't know why I even bother putting it up there because obviously Brisbane aren't that bad. They had 1 bad game against Sydney and that's ruined their rating. Brisbane will be favourites going into this. They are coming off a 5-day break, which is a little bit of a concern. They've got a couple defenders out in Darcy Gardner, Noah Answorth. They're still missing, obviously, Harris Andrews as well, so that's an issue. And no McCluggage back either. So some concerns on the injury side for them. On the Collingwood side of things, Darcy Moore and Scott Pendlebury both out. Probably not as big a concern, maybe, although these key forwards of Brisbane might be able to take advantage of Collingwood a bit with 1 key defender down, and Brisbane missing key defenders isn't too big of a concern because the Collingwood key forwards have not been super this year, although they did show an improved effort last week against GWS. Lot to take in there. This matchup, Brisbane pretty good in it between these 2 teams over recent years. However, maybe not so much in the games at Brisbane. Obviously, last year, this matchup was very similar. Collingwood coming off a 6-day break, Brisbane off a 5-day break, and Collingwood smacked them in the second half to win by 52 points. 2024, this matchup, Collingwood also won that one by 20 points. So the last couple games in Brisbane have gone the way of Collingwood. However, the last couple games in Melbourne have gone the way of Brisbane. The last 2, both matchups last year, round 21, and then again in the prelim final. Brisbane won by a similar sort of margin of like 25 to 30 points. So I don't know what we make of that. Brisbane did get a very important win last week, which was huge for them. They needed that. If you're looking at stats across the year so far, they're 2 very different teams in many ways. Brisbane really good in the clearance and the contested football. Collingwood terrible in those areas in their first 2 games. Were improved in round 3 against GWS, but still a fair way off. Attacking wise, scoring, ability to get shots, inside 50s, all that sort of stuff, all goes the way of Brisbane. But where Collingwood excels is their defence. There's no doubt about it. Collingwood, across last year, were probably the best defence in the competition. And so far this year, I think it's pretty... It'd be a reasonable suggestion to say that they've been the best defence so far this year. I mean, it's hard to make blanket statements like that when there hasn't been that many games and you haven't played everyone sort of thing. Until you start to play a few more matches and have played a greater variety of opposition, I guess you can't make full statements on that. If you're looking at just scoring against, Gold Coast is number 1 at the moment, just ahead of Collingwood by 4 points per game. Has Collingwood played better opposition than Gold Coast? Probably. In most people's opinions, probably, I would say. But we'll see how that plays out. But so far, I think Collingwood's defence is one of the best in the competition. And that's where they do thrive. They really restrict ball movement, but also they don't mind conceding inside 50s because they tend to concede them the way they want to concede them. You'll see it regularly that teams will bomb it into the 50 against them. GWS dominated fair chunks of the game last week in terms of getting it inside 50, but they just weren't creating really good opportunities from that. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see if Collingwood can manage to do that again. There's obviously, Brisbane is a different kettle of fish, but it's also not a full strength Brisbane at the moment. So you'd say Collingwood are probably closer to full strength than Brisbane are on paper, but you'd probably say the full strength Brisbane is better than the full strength Collingwood. So kind of evens this matchup out a bit. That 5-day break is a little bit of an issue for the Lions. It obviously brought them undone, I believe, in this matchup last year. So did they learn from that? What have they learned from that? We'll find out on Thursday in this matchup. We'll move into the next game for the weekend. Friday, Good Friday football. We got a double header. We kick off with Marvel Stadium for the traditional North Melbourne v Carlton game. This one is going to be an interesting one. There is no doubt about it. Carlton are actually favourites at the moment. I have no confidence in either team so far this year, but I guess the fact that North have won 2, maybe we trust them a little bit more than we trust Carlton. 6th on the ladder v 16th. Carlton have been disappointing, to say the least. Their first halves have been really good. Their second halves have been atrocious. Given up 40-point leads to Melbourne last week and 20-point lead to Sydney in opening round. They could well be 3-0. If games finished at halftime, they would be. But games are 4 quarters. And Carlton need to find a solution quickly. Their best, I think, is certainly good enough to beat North Melbourne. Unfortunately, we're just not seeing too much of their best right now. Other side of the fence, North Melbourne, you look at opening their first game, round 1, and last week at round 3, they were okay. You'd say they're probably good enough to beat Carlton. You watch the game in the middle against West Coast and you say, well, maybe they're not. So far, I think North Melbourne are kind of similar in a lot of ways to Carlton. They've started games pretty well, but haven't really played great in the second halves. They've probably still been better than Carlton, to be fair, but it's a matchup that I don't know. On paper, it's a little bit yucky. This is also, as we said, the traditional matchup for Good Friday, and typically it's been a bit of a smashing in favour of the Blues in recent years. Last year when they met in this matchup, at least, Carlton won by like 80 points. They did meet later in the year, and Kangaroos did turn that around. But you go back 2024, this matchup, Carlton won by 50, 60 points. 2023, 20 points. 2022, 50 points. So, it's just something that I don't know. We need to address at some point. Kangaroos have been terrible in this matchup, but maybe this is the year. Everything points towards North Melbourne being too good for Carlton here, based on what we're seeing this year. I don't know. Kangaroos really good in the clearance game, really good in the contested game, which is similar to Carlton, who are pretty good in both of those areas, but maybe not quite as good. The difference between the two teams is probably one in North Melbourne does a lot of their scoring from turnover, whereas Carlton do a lot of their scoring from stoppage so far this year, which isn't that surprising with the kind of game style that Carlton has. I think that's something they maybe need to work on. Something that's worth noting also is the inaccuracy of Carlton, I think, so far this year. they are actually averaging more shots per game than North Melbourne are, but scoring 23 points or less per game. So they're basically kicking 4 less goals from more shots than North Melbourne. So that's a concern. And their ability to stop other teams when other teams are on the roll is another massive concern. You saw what Sydney did in round 1 in the third quarter, opening round, in that third quarter. And then again last week, what Melbourne did to them in that second half. They just had no answers, and they need to find a way to stop teams from scoring. Whether it's in their heads, whether it's game plan, I don't know. I'm not the expert here, but something needs to happen there, and Carlton do have some big issues, in my opinion, in that regard. Friday night footy this week is Adelaide Fremantle at the Adelaide Oval. This will be a good game. This is maybe game of the round. There's probably 3 really good matches this weekend, or potential matches. Thursday night footy, Brisbane Collingwood. This one, Adelaide Fremantle, 2 teams that are fighting to try and fight for a top 4 spot, you'd think. And the other real good one on paper is your Hawthorn Geelong game on Monday. Both teams started the season reasonably well, but completely different. Adelaide have had a really tough run, there's no doubt about it. Winning their first game against Collingwood at the MCG was really good. Back-to-back losses, losing at home to the Bulldogs and on the road to Geelong. They wouldn't want to lose their first 2 home games, but you got to think there's a chance it might happen. Fremantle, they lost first game at GMHBA to Geelong. A similar sort of margin to what Adelaide lost to Geelong by. And then they followed that up with 2 comfortable wins against lower-ranked teams, Melbourne and Richmond. But you still think that Fremantle are looking pretty good. They probably should have beaten Geelong. They were quite comfortable in the first half, but just let that one slip a little bit. They met in round 7 last year, and Freo won that one by 18 points. That was over in the West. 2024, they met in round 3. Also, in the West, Fremantle won that one by 35 points. So that's, Freo have a good record, but at the same time, I've been playing over in the West. Head-to-head, 6-4 in favour of Fremantle over the last 10. You look at the stats so far this year, Fremantle do dominate it, but you've got to also take into account who they've played. Adelaide have probably played 3 teams that you would expect to be top 10 this year, or will be close to top 10 if they're certainly not, but should be. Whereas Fremantle, 2 of their 3 matches have been against teams that probably aren't going to be competing for top 10. So Fremantle has certainly had an easier run, and therefore a lot of the stat sheet is going to be maybe skewed a little bit there. But offensively, defensively, Fremantle have barely put a foot wrong. They did concede a decently high score against Geelong in opening round, or round 1, sorry. But yeah, I don't know. Adelaide's ball movement hasn't been fantastic this year. It's something that maybe they need to work on. Their scoring is not huge. You look at the Crows so far this year. They scored 93 against Collingwood, 88 against the Bulldogs, and 60 against Geelong. But that 88 against the Bulldogs, a lot of that was in the final quarter when they had to score a fair bit. They were 55 at 3-quarter time, so scored 33 points in that final quarter, which is more than they scored in the whole first half. So if they can, I think that's a key thing for them here, is to get that ball movement up and find some more avenues to goal, which they haven't been able to find so far this year. Their small, medium forwards were pretty average last week, and certainly I think will be a factor in this game if they can get them going this week. They need to find a way to stop this midfield of Fremantle. That's probably the key point of this matchup, I think. This Fremantle midfield is so strong and has so many different avenues, whether they're using the main killers in Sarong and Brayshaw. Obviously, Bolton's playing in super form. He was great last week. But they also have the option of Luke Jackson racking up touches and destroying you and going forward and kicking goals. So this midfield forward line of Fremantle is very, very dangerous and going to bring a lot of teams unstuck in 2026. So I think that's the big focus for Adelaide, whose defence is really good on paper and on the field as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a fascinating matchup. You're probably going towards Adelaide just because it's at their home ground, but not with any super confidence. Moving to Saturday football, you've got to wait all the way until 4 p.m. or 4:15 Australian Eastern Time to get the first game of the day on Saturday. And to be honest, it's not one that looks pretty on paper. It's Richmond, Port Adelaide, two teams that have had pretty stinky starts to the year. Port Adelaide will be starting favourites. They did beat Essendon 2 weeks ago. They're 11th on the ladder. Richmond so far are 18th on the ladder after 3 games. They did nearly beat Carlton, only lost by 4 points, followed up by 2 games against teams fighting for probably top 4 in Gold Coast and Fremantle, and got beaten comfortably by both of them. Port Adelaide had just about as easy a start to the season as you could get. On the road to North Melbourne round 1, followed by home games against Essendon and West Coast, and they've only won 1 of those 3. They now play Richmond, who are the team that was 17th on the ladder last year. Potentially looking at maybe a wooden spoon this year. If Port Adelaide don't win this, this season is going to get away from them very, very quick. And I'm not talking finals. I think that's already gone based on what we've seen. I'm talking bottom 2, which would be really, really bad fall from grace for Port Adelaide. Richmond on the other side, they haven't been great this year. They probably should have beaten Carlton if they had have made use of some Tom Lynch shots at goal, but their big issue is no Nankervis at the moment. A few other injuries as well. They keep racking up injuries, in fact. But Port Adelaide are not a dominant ruck team, so maybe the Nankervis loss isn't as bad here as it was last week when they were playing Fremantle. That was always going to be an absolute disaster for them. But it's a game that I don't think too many people, other than Richmond or Port Adelaide fans, will be watching a whole heap of this game. It doesn't look great on paper. Port Adelaide should win based on numbers. Based on like Zach Butters effect, I guess. You can never completely write the team off when the Zach Butters is out there. Port Adelaide have won the last 5 against Richmond. They tend to be pretty convincing in those wins. Last time they met was in Adelaide round 2 last year. Port Adelaide won it by like 70, 80 points, something like that. So I think on paper it's a game Port Adelaide should be winning, but at the same time they've given us very little so far. They were really good against Essendon. They looked great, but yeah, at the same time they looked pretty putrid last week, losing to West Coast. So yeah, it's an interesting game. Saturday night football is West Coast v the Sydney Swans. The Swans coming off the bye. Their last game was 2 weeks ago against Hawthorn when they went down by 17 points. It wasn't as bad as showing. Obviously, they were missing some players. They're going to continue missing players, obviously. No Gordon. But they're playing against a West Coast team that's in form. Who would have thought we would say that? West Coast have won their last 2 games, beating North Melbourne by 17 and then Port Adelaide by 2. This might be too much. Maybe a step too far. They met once last year, which was round 24. And the Eagles were actually pretty good for the first half of that match. In fact, they were leading at halftime by 7 points. They only managed 1 goal in the second half and ended up losing by 70-odd points. 67 points. So, I don't know. It's a game that you'd imagine Sydney should be way too strong. I think we can all remember back to 2023. These two teams have only been meeting once per year, but in 2023 was the last time a team kicked 200 points in a match, and that was Sydney against West Coast in an absolute training drill. That was just one-way domination that day. It was huge. 9 goals first quarter, 5 goals second quarter, 11 goal third quarter, and 6 goal final quarter to end up kicking 31 goals. An absolute disaster that day for West Coast. Things have got better, but I think this is still a bridge too far for them. It's in the West, but even if West Coast lose this, their start to the season has been better than probably most people expected from them. So it wouldn't be all doom and gloom for them. Sydney just have to win this for themselves though, because they're a team that across the first 2 weeks were outstanding. A lot of people starting to think that they are a top 4 opportunity team. They have to win games like this if that is the case. If they lost it, it wouldn't be doom and gloom, but it would be a little bit of a concern for them going forward. Just wondering where they're at. I know missing some players, but you've got to make do with what you've got. And they're still pretty healthy across the rest of the board. It's just that Goulden one, and I mean, we fully expect, I believe, Isaac Heaney to be back this week. Moving on to Easter Sunday football, we've got 2 games. We could kick off in the afternoon with Melbourne Gold Coast at the MCG. Gold Coast playing their second game at the MCG in a row. Obviously had the bye in between, but that's almost unheard of for Gold Coast Suns. I think they only played 1 game there last year. They play Melbourne. Melbourne in form. Gold Coast in better form, but we'll see how this matchup develops. Gold Coast is currently sitting top of the ladder, one of only 2 undefeated teams in the competition, them and the Bulldogs. Whereas Melbourne, they've won 2 of their first 3. They beat St Kilda, they beat Carlton, and their only loss on the road to Fremantle. It's a pretty solid start to the year. I think most people still probably don't think Melbourne are quite ready to compete for a top 10 spot, but maybe they are. Maybe they're going to surprise a few. I think they've already surprised a few. What's the quality of their matches so far? I mean, the Fremantle one's a good opposition. Carlton, we don't know, but they did give them a 40-point head start and still beat them by 23. And St Kilda, we haven't made a decision on that, but St Kilda have started 1 and 3, so there is that to look at. Whereas Gold Coast, they smacked Geelong in opening round. They were absolutely fantastic that week. Geelong had a bad game though, and since then they've only played West Coast and Richmond. So we'll make a decision on Gold Coast as this season goes, but they should be winning this sort of game. It's at the MCG, which does make it a little bit more difficult, but you'd still think that this Gold Coast team should be too strong. However, the defence of Melbourne has been pretty solid throughout the year so far. They've looked okay. So if they can shut down Ben King, that will go a long way to it. Their midfield has been overperforming, you'd probably say. This Gold Coast midfield is really strong, so it's going to be hard for them to kind of keep up with that, I think, on paper. But neither team dominant at clearances. Probably opens this game up a little bit more to whoever can perform well in that area. If one team takes control of that clearance game, that might go a big way to winning this. The contested side of things almost certainly goes the way of Gold Coast if they can convert that into clearance domination. That will lead them a long way towards winning this. Melbourne were historically great in this matchup. They'd won 8 in a row, but Gold Coast have won the last 2, both matchups last year. Gold Coast getting it over the line by 60 points in round 3 and 20 points in round 16. I think that's pretty much everything we have to go go through in that one. So we'll jump into Sunday night football, and this might be the worst bit of scheduling I've seen the AFL do. I can't say ever, but certainly for this season. You've got a Sunday night pre-public holiday blockbuster time slot, and you put what is potentially the worst matchup you could. Western Bulldogs v the Bombers at Marvel Stadium. And we don't want to be too negative around here, but this is a recipe for disaster. This matchup happened twice last year, and both times the Bulldogs won by 90 points. 91 points in round 10, and then 93 points in round 20. Yes, the Bombers did beat them in 2024, but last year was a disaster. So two 90-point smashings. From that point, you'd have to say the Bulldogs have got better. And you'd almost have to say as well, the Bombers have got worse. This is on paper a recipe for more than 100-point flogging. If the real Bulldogs come out and play, which they've been known to absolute decimate bottom-ranked teams, especially at Marvel, if the real Bulldogs come out to this match, this is going to be an absolute shellacking. Look, it is what it is, but I can't believe the AFL have gone and put this as a Sunday night blockbuster fixture. You could have done so much better with scheduling with any other option, but it's wild to me that this is the one they've gone with. I don't know. Can we find any positives? Bulldogs second on the ladder, yet to lose a game. Won two close ones against top-ranked teams and then absolutely decimated GWS in the middle. The Bombers, they haven't looked close to winning a game. They did come back a little bit late against North Melbourne last week, but North Melbourne and the Bulldogs are two completely different sides of the coin. They got smacked comfortably by Hawthorn. They got smacked comfortably by Port Adelaide. There's just no way that you'd have any suggestion that this game is going to go any other way than the predicted result, which is Western Bulldogs winning comfortably. You look across the stat sheet, all the way down, basically, it's just Bulldogs dominating it. Scoring from turnover, scoring from stoppage, just scoring in general. The one thing that Essendon kind of break even in is transition D50 to forward 50. The problem is Essendon's ability to score once inside 50 is not great. So that kind of blows that stat out. Defensively, they have not been able to stop teams from scoring. They're conceding 20 goals a game, basically, averaging 119.7 points against per match. It's, on paper, a rough read for the Bombers. And this is not where it gets easier. This is doomsday scenario, I think, on Sunday night for the Bombers. One game left to look at, and then we'll jump into our footy tips, and that's Hawthorn, Geelong, MCG, Easter Monday. Traditional matchup. We've had some crackers on this day in the history. Obviously, prelim final rematch from last year where Geelong got up by 30 points. They met, obviously, Easter Monday last year, and Geelong just snuck over the line by 7 points in that one. Geelong have a pretty good record over recent outings between these two teams. They've won the last 5 and 8 of the last 10. However, there was a period of that 29 to basically 2023 where Geelong were a good team and Hawthorn were not. So there is that to play into it. But even the last 2 years, Hawthorn have made the finals both of those years, and yet Geelong have won the last 4 matchups in that time frame. So Geelong do have a good record here, and probably one that you'd count on showing up here. Hawthorn are favourites though, and the reason for that is they've been impressive in their wins. There's no doubt about that. You take out opening round where GWS got a hold of them a little bit. their other 2 wins have been good. Granted, one was against Bombers, who are arguably the worst team in the competition right now, and the other one against a slightly depleted Sydney team. I know Hawthorn aren't at full strength either, but you still got to take that into account. Whereas Geelong looked terrible in opening round, but since then, they've beaten 2 pretty solid teams. Granted, both of them down at the Cattery, but they're looking okay. They're certainly not bad so far this year. This Hawthorn team is dangerous. When they're at their peak, it's because they have all 23 players performing really, really well. That's what got them over the line in that game against Sydney. You look at the stat sheet, you look at our ratings that we do. I think their lowest ranked player in that match was like 34th on the ground. Sydney had like the 10 worst players because all the Hawthorn players contribute to the win. And that's what they do differently than pretty much every other team. And that's kind of why I was of the opinion they didn't need that star midfielder coming in, was because they're a team that's built around everyone contributing, everybody having their time. And yeah, that's shown over the last couple of years and shown again so far this year, even more so maybe this year, how well they are. They share it around, how much everybody gets involved in it, in every play. So it does read really well, the stat sheet for Hawthorn so far, but they have had that game against the Bombers that was obviously a stat padding experience, whereas so far Geelong, their 2 wins have been against tough opposition. It's a game that should be game of the round. Historically speaking, these 2 play pretty good games of football, and yeah, it's one that could go 100% either way. I'll probably change my footy tip 4 or 5 times on this game. Most of the others, I'm pretty set in stone with the way I'm going, whereas this one, I'm not confident either way. Both teams certainly could win this. It's the Carlton North Melbourne game is probably similar, but in the opposite way. Like this one, I think both teams are pretty good, and it could go either way. Whereas the Carlton North Melbourne game, I still don't think either of them are any good, and I have no faith in either of them. But either team could win that one hypothetically. So that's all 8 games coming up this weekend. We'll jump into our footy tips for this round. We're 18-28 so far this year. I think we went 6 or 7 last week, hoping to do even better this week. We're kicking off with Brisbane to beat Collingwood. We've gone by 7 points. Not super confident in that game, but we're going with the favourites at home in Brisbane. At the moment, we've got Carlton by 5 points. It's a tough one. They are the favourites. It's probably one that North should be winning, though, I think. But we've tipped Carlton at the moment. Adelaide at home against the Dockers. That's a game that definitely could go either way. Just being at home for the Crows, I think we're going with them. Plus, they won't want to start 0-2 at home. I wouldn't have thought. So maybe a little bit of motivation there. Port Adelaide to beat Richmond. I think Port Adelaide's best is better than Richmond's best. Unfortunately, Port Adelaide's worst is as bad as Richmond's worst. So, yeah, we're going with power but not confident. Sydney should be too strong for West Coast. I know West Coast are improving, but I don't think they're improving quite to the level of a Sydney Swans just yet. But we got Swans by 31. Gold Coast should be too strong for Melbourne, but Melbourne have been playing some good football, so we've got it by 22. Bulldogs should be way too strong. We've gone by 80 over the Bombers, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this over 100. And we've gone Cats by 3 points over the Hawks, the one outsider that we've tipped in this round. And as I said, I could change that tip multiple times this week. We'll see what happens heading into the game on, I was going to say Sunday, but it's on Monday. That is a wrap on everything for round 4. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Don't forget to go check us out on social media. X/Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. All Aussie Rules everywhere. Plenty of content every single day all over the place. So go give them all a follow. interact with the posts, all that sort of stuff. I appreciate everyone that does. Don't forget to also, if you haven't already, follow or subscribe on your preferred platform for podcasting. We do these episodes twice every single week, a preview episode on Thursday, review episode on Mondays. They go live on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, so make sure you follow, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. We're going to be back with the next episode of the podcast on Monday night, hopefully a few hours after the Hawthorn-Geelong game finishes, so hopefully by about 8 p.m. that will be live, so make sure you come back, check that out. And until then, I hope your team does well in the footy this weekend. 8 big games. I hope you enjoy your footy this weekend, and we will be back next week for more football talk.